Okay, SAP, we've all heard of it, and we'll just look at a few facts and figures. So, it actually predates the PC, and SAP actually originally started out doing software for small mid-sized businesses, and funnily enough, the solutions they were offering in that space were actually better than what was being offered in the high-end space at the time, and they went very quickly up market. We're familiar that they're the #1 in ERP software worldwide, and they're the largest software vendor in Europe. Interestingly enough, $16 billion worth of sales revenue last year. They have sales and development locations in more than 75 countries, and there's over 11,500 SAP partner customer companies around the world. 80% of the 232,000 customers they have are actually small mid-sized enterprises, and they've been able to triple the SME customer base in the last 3 years. So in relationship to SAP Business One, there are a couple of key areas that I wanted to point out. We're going to have a look more detail with the SAP Business One core during our session this morning. Notice over on the left-hand side, they talk about lifecycle management, and within there, essentially, SAP, as part of the solution, are providing you with a framework that better manages the life cycle of the actual software. Includes things like scheduled backups with advanced options for safe recovery. They give you proactive health checks, enables efficient support by providing key data for root cause analysis. They have a guided and safe upgrade process, and it includes a silent mode for deploying new updates and recovery. Fewer clicks means more automation, means lower total cost of ownership. Lower costs for support due to the detailed health checking that you get with the system. And it's improved system availability and reduces system downtime due to the proactive issue reporting. Moving into the integration framework, which you'll see on the lower right-hand side of the illustration. Essentially, it's a framework that they provide within Business One for linking it to other systems. Now, that might be to big SAP. It might be to other SAP Business One systems, courtesy of the intercompany trading and consolidations. It could be to non-SAP systems through EDI and various other mechanisms. They include within the framework a number of inbuilt what they call scenarios that encompasses the iPad and iPhone integration. They've got dashboards built in running through the framework. They also have automated requests for quotation and Ariba integration. At the bottom of the illustration, we'll see on-premise versus on-demand. We're all hearing about cloud. Cloud seems to be very, very much in people's mindset at the moment. So with SAP Business One, they're giving you the option of running in a traditional on-premise or running in an on-demand scenario. One of the differences with the on-demand is that rather than worrying about your software and the infrastructure that you're running it on and maintaining and supporting, etc., essentially you get a very, very simplified, straightforward cost structure where a single payment covers the software, the service, and the support, and that is able to then scale however you need it to scale. You don't need to worry about scaling your back-end systems if you need to increase your headcount by 50%, for example. It's still customizable, and so all of the things that you may want to do in terms of an on-premise with extending the solution, with additional add-ons or actual customization of the underlying system is still possible within the cloud scenario. And as part of it, you get automatic updates and maintenance, and that enables you to stay current with the latest technology without any headaches, which is fantastic. Also, just slightly above the demand, you'll see a mention of SAP HANA. Now, this is SAP's game-changing business management which enables you to process very large volumes of data, give you much better speed and performance. Essentially, it's in-memory computing, but with a change to the way data is actually stored from being a row-based structure to a columnar-based structure, which dramatically increases retrieval and storage speeds. You can run the actual whole solution on HANA, or you may just care to run the analytics and reporting on HANA. As part of it, you get access to accurate real-time data. You get quick search, and that includes a very, very detailed Google-type search. So if, for example, you want to find out who bought a particular item from a particular location on a particular day, you can have that answer as quick as you can think of that question. User-friendly reporting, whilst being able to maintain the business process transaction, your reporting won't affect the actual transactional speed and vice versa. In the next area, we're looking at just the footprint for the SAP Business One system, and as you can see, we've got a layer which is looking at the mobility, the analytics dashboards. It's fully multilingual, and I think we're going to be seeing an example of that. And they have localizations for the SAP Business One in over 40 countries, and they are actually all running out of the one code base. So you don't have your people in China using a different version of the software to what you are running. Okay, and you can see you've got all of the key areas that you need in your ERP, including financial, sales, service, purchasing, inventory, and production. So with that said, I'm going to pass over to Simon to run us through the SAP Business One. Thanks, Simon.
Thanks, Darryl. Hi, everyone. My name's Simon. I'm the manager of the consulting team and the development team here at Microchannel, and I'm going to show you SAP Business One. Let me go straight in here. Here's what we call the cockpit of SAP Business One. And over to the left, you can see I've got a master or main menu, and the cockpit or the desktop area is all about placing widgets in a manner that are useful to me when I log into Business One, as opposed to another user who may profile their desktop according to their points of interest. So we can have browsers running in the cockpit. We can have common functions running in the cockpit. So a common function being the areas that I naturally gravitate to during my business day. We can have open documents. So if I wanted to quickly view all the open sales orders, here's my list. And now you're seeing a typical report screen in SAP Business One. And as you might expect, all the columns are sortable. There's a full-blown messages and alerts system built within SAP Business One. Now, what that means is we have the opportunity for proactive control of the system and reactive control of the system. And by that I mean full-blown approval and workflow. In other words, create a document, that document gets approved by Manager 1 or gets approved by Manager 1 and Manager 2 before the document is committed to the system, the proactive approach. And the reactive approach being alerts. And here's an example of an alert where myself as a manager has set up an alert. I want to be notified whenever a certain document is processed against a certain customer where a credit limit has been exceeded. So more of a reactive process. I'm going to show you an example of an approval process later in the demonstration. So now I'd like to point out the search toolbar at the top of the right-hand corner of the screen. This is basically your Google search within SAP Business One. In other words, I could type in a set of characters and pull up records that SAP Business One associate with those characters. In this case, I've typed in some guy called Norm, and it's brought up a customer or business partner record for one of my customers, Norm Thompson. What we're looking at here is the business partner master data screen. Now, SAP Business One doesn't distinguish between customers, vendors, and leads in separate screens. They house them all under the one controlled business partner master data screen. Typically, when I go and set up a business partner, I'm going to assign the usual address details, telephone numbers, and in addition, potentially multiple and unlimited ship-to addresses, as well as multiple and unlimited bill-to addresses, if need be. With each address that I store in the system, I have the opportunity to show location in the web browser, and obviously that brings up a Google map to show me where the customer is located. In addition, I can attach external documents to the business partner record. Now, the attachments screen that you see here is available at every master record screen and within every transactional or document entry screen. So what that means is that I can attach external documents, photos, contracts, emails to any area of the system, and it obviously creates a link, meaning whenever I pull up that document in future, I'll be able to see any external attachments. Going back to the search bar, you've seen that I can type in Norm to bring up a business partner record. Equally, I could type in a document number. As an example, let's type in 228, and you'll see it reveals all the documents in my system that have a number 228 attached. Obviously, I could have sales order with the 228, and equally, I could have a purchase order using the number 228. You'll see alongside the document numbers are some orange arrows. These orange arrows, or golden arrows, permeate throughout the system. Whenever you see a golden arrow, that's your chance to interact and drill into the area. So if I drilled into the purchase order, 228, I'm now looking at a purchase order document in the system. Equally, if I drilled into the AR invoice, I'm now seeing an accounts receivable invoice entry screen. And these are fully interactive. So if I'm looking at an open invoice, and perhaps I want to type in some remarks from here, I've now updated that document purely by using the search function in V1. I do have dashboards within my cockpit, and to give you a flavor of what these dashboards look like, here's one I prepared earlier. This is the sales dashboard. And from here you can see very nice and elegant top 5 customers, and as I move my mouse over each of those, I get a bit more information. You can see that if I click on Earthshaker, over to the right I get some new refreshed information about Earthshaker. If I click on Norm Thompson, I'm now seeing all the items that I sold Norm Thompson. And as you might expect, if I was to click on one of those items, it's going to take me into the master record for that item. Okay, so what I'd like to show you now is a little taste of the CRM capabilities of SAP Business One. So just to go back a step, remember that this is SAP's entry-level system. This is a system that's designed for small to medium-sized enterprises. It is not the big brother SAP that we've all heard about. This is aimed fairly and squarely at the SME market. Now what that means is when you buy SAP Business One, it's an off-the-shelf system. You're not having a team of programmers walk in and code a tailor-made solution for 6 months and beyond. So what you see is what you get. Having said that, there's plenty of configurable and customizable opportunities within the system, and I'll show you some of those this morning. Because it is an ERP system, it has a bit of everything. So when I say CRM, I'm literally talking about pulling up a business partner and creating service calls, creating activities, creating recurring transactions, and the like. So, for example, if I look at a related service call for this particular business partner, and I drill into the activity for that business partner, you can see that I can basically create a history of my communications with this business partner. And the system will track everything against the business partner based on the type of activity that I create. So that's very useful if I'm in constant communication with the business partner, if I have to attach various contracts to the business partner, if I need to generate reminders for meetings and have the system notify me when it's time to perform the meeting or the phone call or whatever it might be, and so on. So the system has built-in CRM functionality within. I mentioned before that there is a reactive and a proactive approach to controlling how documents are created in the system. And now what I'd like to do is show you how the approval process, for example, could be configured to work in SAP Business One. So the approval process is the proactive approach, where one may create a sales quote, for example, and given the user's profile, perhaps needs to go through an approval process before that sales quote can be added into the system. Maybe we want to keep an eye on the level of discounting that that user is affording the business partner. So to demonstrate, I'm going to log in as a different user. This user's name is Brad. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but Brad speaks Chinese. So what I'm showing you here is exactly the same application. This is SAP Business One. This is the same product that you have on your server that one person views in English, and another person, perhaps logging in remotely, is viewing in simplified Chinese. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't speak Chinese. So what I'm going to do is switch this back to English. And that's how simple it is. There's so many supported languages in the system, but just to give you a flavor, here's a list. So if you have people working in Israel, for example, you can change the language of that particular user to Hebrew and guarantee the person will log in. Everything goes from left to right, or I should say right to left. Let's get back to our approval process. As Brad, I've logged into the system, and what I'd like to do is create a sales quote. So here's the sales quotation screen in SAP Business One. Now you'll notice it's a very nice, clean screen, and that's because I've configured this screen to suit Brad's purposes. Now, to give you an idea of what's available, if I go into this little button called Form Settings, and obviously as a system administrator, I would only have access to do this, you can see there's a plethora of columns to choose from. In this case, I wanted to keep the screen as less cluttered as possible so that Brad didn't have to do too much thinking. Now I'm just going to type in my favorite customer, Norm, again, and I'm ready to begin a sales quote for my customer called Norm Thompson. Again, if I wanted to see a little bit more information about Norm, I can drill into the golden arrow to reveal the business partner master data screen. And let's go and choose an item. We'll place a sales quote for 10 of those. And I'm going to, as Brad, give Norm 30% discount on the whole sales quote. If I click Add, you can see that I've got an approval process in action here that's stopping Brad from automatically being able to add this record into the system. So here's an opportunity for Brad to say, I want to do a sales quote, and could my manager please approve? So a nice little remark there, because when the manager logs into the system, they're going to see exactly that. Now that sales quote is now sitting in the background as a draft document. So it's not a committed document at all, but it's sitting there waiting for something to happen. Let me log back in as manager. If you look down to the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you'll see in my little messages and alerts window a new line called request for document approval. Now me as a manager would get updated with any instance of alerts or approvals throughout the day, and then I can take the appropriate action. If I double click on the request for document approval, you'll see there's a sales quotation waiting for approval. If I open up the sales quotation, I get a nice little window, could you please approve? From there, I'm obviously going to have a look at the sales quotation. And here I can see that Brad's probably given too much of a discount to this quotation. So I'm going to let Brad know in no uncertain terms that I'm not going to approve this sales quote. For Brad. If I log back in as Brad, you can see Brad's now received a little message to say that operation and approval process has been rejected. If I open up the sales quote, you'll see the draft says rejected, and there's nothing more I can do with this document as Brad. It's not going any further. Okay? So obviously I'm not going to fire Brad at this stage. We'll keep him on and see how he does for another month or so. I'd like to now move on to something a little bit different. In SAP Business One, there's various flavors of reporting. Now, one I showed you before was an open items list. And you can see I can look at open orders, open deliveries, open purchase orders, any sort of documents that are sitting on the system. And you can see that it presents it in a very nice grid fashion, all the columns of which are sortable and filterable. All of these reports you see on screen can be exported to the likes of Excel, to Word, to PDF, just as an example. And obviously they can be emailed and printed. There's full Outlook integration with the system, so much so that when I receive an email from a customer within Outlook, I can connect directly into SAP Business One, and I can attach the email and any related attached documents within the email directly to a business partner. And that's stored as an activity against that business partner record. Some other reporting options available in Business One are the very useful drag and relate functions. So an example of drag and relate is, let's say I have a salesperson, for example. Let me go and grab a salesperson. Or in fact, let me change tack slightly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up an item from inventory. And I'm curious to see how my IBM InfoPrint 1312 has been doing lately. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick it up and drag it over to sales, just like this. If I drag it onto AR invoices, what I get is a new view showing me all the invoices that contain that particular printer. Okay. Equally, I can drag the item over to AR invoice details, And this will show me all the documents that have used, and AR documents in this case, that have used the IBM InfoPrint printer. So this is just a simple way of being able to create dynamic queries on the fly using columns that can be pre-configured and sorted accordingly. SAP Business One also uses Crystal Reports. In fact, Crystal Reports is owned by SAP. Crystal Reports are a great way to display invoice layouts, quotation layouts, and the like, as well as nice graphical static reports, dashboards, etc. I'd like to move on now to showing you a typical day in the life of SAP Business One. And I thought a nice way to begin would be to start with a sales quote, which I then convert to a sales order, and, well, let's see what happens after that. So what I'd like to do is show you how a process works in SAP Business One. Here's my sales quote screen. Again, I'm going to pick my favorite customer, Norm Thompson. And I'm going to select some items that I'd like to quote Norm. When I go to the item number field and I click on my little search bar, it brings up a list of all the items in the system. I can sort, I can find. In this case, I'd like to find a, let me see, a Lexmark printer, for example. I'm also going to quote Norm for a Lexmark printer AC adapter. I'm also going to quote my friend Norm for DVD R-Disc 10-pack. And I think I'm going to quote Norm for a computer, a purpose-built computer. We'll call that a PC P4 2.5 view. So what I've done here is I've used my control button, my control key, and my mouse pointer to select multiple items at once, and in the order that I want to drop them in to the sales quote. I can also use the Shift key to pick up a range of items. So very quick and easy to pull up a range or selected items and drop them into the sales quote. So here's a very simple quote. I can add the quote into the system. Now remembering that I'm logged in as manager, so I've decided I don't need to follow approval process as manager. I'm able to very quickly add the sales quote into the system. Now let's say Norm comes back to me and says, yep, you got a green light on the quote, let's go ahead and do it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the quote to a sales order. Now you'll notice I've got a bunch of choices. I can go straight to a sales order. I could bypass the sales order if I have stock and go straight to delivery. But we'll do a sales order for the moment. This now opens up the sales order screen, and of course it populates with all the information that's carried across from the sales quote. Within the sales quote, I have an opportunity to reflect on how much stock I have in the system. And I can do that by adding columns into the grid very easily. And equally, I can drill into the items. In this case, you can see this item is made up of some components. There's multi-level bill of materials capabilities within the system. And I can look at stock data very clearly to see at my various warehouses what I have in stock. So coming back to the sales order, I've decided that because my PC P4 2.4 gig is an item that I'm going to build in-house, as part of this sales order, I'm going to create what's called a procurement document. Now, a procurement document could be a purchase order, or it could be a production order. And in this case, I'm doing a made-to-order scenario, if you like. So from here, if I go and add my sales quote into the system, it stops me because I haven't filled out all the requisite screens that I've needed for the sales order. So I'm going to put in a date of 30 of August. And now it asks me, do I want to update all my lines with that same delivery date? And of course, I'm going to say yes. Now when I add the record, I'm presented with the procurement confirmation wizard. And this is that process that says, okay, I've created a sales order, but maybe there's some stock that needs to be either ordered or made to fulfill this order, so let me do both at the same time. It's just a wizard. So I'm going to click through the process and go next, next, and from here I'm going to choose the item, in this case the P4 2.5 gig, that I want to make as part of the fulfillment of the sales order, and it's going to be, rather than a purchase order, a production order. I click next, I click next, and there we are. The system's gone through and it's actually created the production order for me. There's my little golden arrow. And if I drill into the golden arrow, you now see that the system has created a production order. To build one of these, I'm going to use the following components. This is now a planned production order. I'm going to release this so that the guys down on the floor can go and create me a PC V4 2.4 gig computer. Let's close a few screens and go back a step. So what I've done now is I've created a sales quote. My business partners accepted the sales quote, so I've turned that into a sales order. I know I have some of the stock, but I know for one particular line item, I've needed to go and create a production order. I'm now ready to potentially move to the next stage, which could be delivering the items that I have available. There's a couple of ways to do that. There is a full pick and pack management area within V1. And for this reason, I would obviously use Pick and Pack Manager if I was picking up multiple orders and wanting to release to the warehouse to go pick and then deliver en masse. Equally, I can go back to a sales order and using a right click, generate a pick list for that one particular order directly from the sales order screen. And what this does is it opens up the Pick and Pack Manager. Very simple process. I have open orders, I have orders that have been released for picking, and I have orders that have been picked, in other words, ready to be delivered. I can see from here that I have all the items from the sales order to go, except for this last item, which I know is currently being produced. I can select everything and deselect one, or I can select as I need. I can see that I've got plenty of the other items to release. I'm going to release those to a pick list. And typically, warehouse people can now go and start picking the items. If I move to the release bin, I now see I have said items released for picking. There is a pick number that's created. You'll see here under this column, pick number 6. So everything is contained within a document number, in this case number 6. This is what the pick list will look like. And from here, I can say pick all, or I can select as required. If I now go to my picked drawer, because all those items have been picked, you can see that they're sitting, waiting patiently in my pick drawer. And from here I can select them and I can create manual or automatic delivery, or I can bypass the delivery document and go straight to an AR invoice. So what you've seen is a Pick and Pack Manager at a very simple level based on one sales order. Now imagine using Pick and Pack Manager for a range of orders that all need to be picked in good time, with the outcome of that being a set of either delivery documents or AR invoices. Very powerful indeed. Let's go and create the manual delivery in this case. So this is the delivery screen. I can simply add a record from here, and I've now created my delivery document for the 3 items that I have in the sales order. Remember, we've still got 1 item here that's waiting patiently to be made, and once that's recorded as complete, then I'll be able to issue that, and the order, the sales order, can be completed. Now, one way that I can do that is to right-click on the sales order and pull up something called Relationship Map. Every document within the system is connected to something called Relationship Map. Relationship Map is a graphical display of the full life cycle of a sale, for example. So you can see that the life cycle started with a sales quote, it went to an order, the back of that was a production order, and we've done some deliveries. As you might expect, I can drill into any of the life cycle points within that relationship map to see what's going on. Here's my released production order. Now, if this is ready and waiting, then as a production order member of staff, I would right-click and report completion. One of the other useful tools in SAP V1 is something called Journal Entry Preview. Because this is going to create an accounting entry, I may want to view what that journal looks like before I actually commit the document. So I can right-click, go into Journal Entry Preview to see what's going to happen with this particular production order if I commit it to the system. That Journal Entry Preview is available within any accounting entry screen in the system. Very useful indeed. Let's now do the receipt from production. And as a final act, I'm going to close the production order because it's now done. It's completed. So typically what would happen next is I would go and complete the delivery for the last item and then off to invoice. Now from an AR invoice entry screen, I can pick up Norm. I can copy from, and I can go to deliveries and pick up multiple deliveries to consolidate onto the one invoice. Standard functionality in the system. Let's do that for one of those deliveries I just did. And again, if I go back to that AR invoice, I can go right-click to Relationship Map and see the full life cycle of this particular sale and drill into any area within that life cycle. Right, so that's perhaps a good example of a typical day in the life of SAP Business One. A few other areas that I'd like to cover are audit. So within the system, there is a very integrity-bound audit trail. And I want to show you how I can see history against any document in the system. So, for example, here's a delivery that we did a moment ago. Let's say I came in and made a change to the remarks on the delivery. Remember, this is an accounting document, so I won't be able to change anything that's accounting related, but I could update notes, for example. And because there's no accounting impact there, it's going to happily accept that. If I go to Show History window, I now see that I have 2 entries against this one delivery note, and it's telling me who made the change, when the change was made, and what the change actually was. So you can see previous value, new value. In fact, if I wanted to, I could drill back to the previous delivery document as it appeared before I made any change to that document record. Many uses for that. You can imagine if you're doing a sales quotation and that sales quotation underwent multiple revisions, you could store the sales quotation as one document record in the system, but then using the show history function, revert back to a previous sales quotation within the fullness of time as the customer decided to go for sales quote number 2 as opposed to perhaps sales quote number 5. By the way, you can see that as a manager, I received an alert to say that the document I just did has exceeded the credit limit. So these are the sorts of areas that allow you to get a real good grip on what's happening within the ERP system while the users are happily churning away. And these alerts and approval processes can be tailor-made to suit your requirements. Incidentally, as can the document entry screens. So I remarked before about how columns can be added or taken away to make the screens as elegant as you like them to be. Equally, we can go to a field level, and by double-clicking and a certain key being pressed on the keyboard, change the label of that field. Now that's very useful if you want the screen to speak your language. So here's the default field called customer reference number. As an administrator, I may decide I want to change that to say purchase order number. Field name has now changed. It's speaking our language. That's the power of SAP and Business One. Other highlights of the system to talk about with you are light MRP. So within the MRP, I can create forecasts and order recommendations, and those forecasts can be looked upon, using various periodic tables such as days, weeks, and months. There is production and planning. You already saw a little taste of that through the production order screen. There's a service management system built within SAP Business One. So from here I can create customer equipment cards. So in other words, items that I've sold to customers that now become specifically for the customer, where I can then track service calls and see a real history against that item throughout the course of its life. Within stock management, I can use scanning tools to barcode and scan items into the system. Very useful when it comes to stock taking. There are multiple and tiered levels of price list capabilities within the system, starting at the top list, the top tier. So I can create as many price lists as I like, and from there start to create things like special pricing against those price lists, based on period and volume discounts, and based on special pricing or contract pricing. Because there's a CRM system built into SAP Business One, I can do things like create sales opportunities and marketing campaigns, all based off the information that's being tracked against the business partners in the system. So there you have it. There's a taste of SAP Business One. I hope that was informative, and ready to take any questions you might have.